A Giants podcast for Giants fans
by Giants fans.
It's Shaun Morash.
On the sideline, into the end zone. Touchdown, Giants!
From the offseason through the wins and the losses, it's time to take one Giant step.
All right, welcome into One Giant Step, Week 3 preview edition as the Giants head to the dog pounds as dogs once again, 6.5-point underdogs to the Cleveland Browns. I'm Shaun Morash, Bryce Gelman with us as well, and a very special guest. Longtime Giant fan on the Fan, somebody I produced for many, many years ago. Sunday evenings, you can hear her following Sunday Night Football, I believe, following Sunday Night Football, Lori Rubinson. Lori, hello.
Hey, Shaun, that's true. I remember when you were first starting out and producing for me, and you're right. In terms of WFAN, when I first started out there, I think I was the only host who predicted that the Giants would win the Super Bowl over the Patriots back in the 2007 season when it was the ridiculous undefeated Patriots team in the upset. And I just, you know what, earlier in that playoff run, I didn't think they would win in Green Bay. But by the time they got to the Super Bowl, I was kind of like, you know what? I got a feeling here, and I'm going to go with it. And I picked the upset, and they did me right.
And those were the glory days. I mean, Bryce, who's with us, Lori, I got news for you. He was probably like 4 years old for that game. So that's how long ago it's been and how long we've been dying for good Giant football. So, Lori, let's get into this here. The team is 0-2.
Yeah.
I think, and you and I had spoken in the WFAN newsroom midsummer somewhere along there briefly about the Giants, and this was a big topic, and I've tried to bring this up on Evan and Tiki multiple times to hammer home here. We all said the season would come down to those first two games, and you would know what kind of season it was after those first two games, and they lost both games here to Washington and Minnesota, and we'll get into whether Lori views any positives with this team. I'm always an optimist, right? Like I can see the positives with the roster and the positives with the team. But before we get into any decisions and what's going on with Saquon Barkley and stuff, where are you at 0-2 wise, Daboll and Schoen, and with the roster and the coaching, all of that?
So, Shaun, you know me, and I think I tend to be balanced, neutral, kind of calm, objective. I tend to be more of that sort of person by nature, more optimistic, glass half full. After the first game of the season, 3 hours in, I went on my show that night on Sunday night and said, shame on John Mara that he has put us in this position again, that honestly, I'm looking at Arch Manning going, is he really not coming out this year?
You're not alone.
3 hours in, and I'm texting scouts that I follow and asking about Quinn Ewers and does he have enough of an NFL arm and arm strength. Shame on John Mara. And we're going to have, by the way, the same BS again where the fan base is going to eat itself. We're going to eat our own. Half the fan base is going to be like me. We're going to be rooting for losses and a high draft pick so we can finally get a franchise quarterback so we can rebuild this thing. And half the franchise are on you're a lousy fan if you root against your team, and you cannot possibly do that. And we're all going to attack each other, and it's coming. And shame on John Mara for putting us in that position. So that's where I'm at, is I think if you can't win, if you're 0-2, you tell me, Shaun, other than the Panthers, who, by the way, now have Andy Dalton, so I'm really not sure, in Germany, where is a win? When are they going to be favored, and where is a win coming from?
Oh, okay. All right. So this is where I'm going to – and understand, Lori, that I have been very team tank here, and I still am. This is where I'm going to turn a little bit of the optimistic thing. I still do believe in Brian Daboll, the head coach, okay? And Brian Daboll, the head coach, at 2-8 last year, managed to squeeze 3 or 4 more wins the rest of the way, whether it was DeVito or obviously Tyrod Taylor. And I do think that somewhere along the line, the Giants, and it may come back to haunt them, are going to inexplicably win 1 or 2 games that they shouldn't. And I
don't think they're going to go all Detroit Lions.
But they're going to end up in that 5-win situation that makes us go crazy. Also, as a caveat, Right, but Bryce, and I think you and I have talked about this as a caveat. I also think this is a real NFL problem too. And John Mara has every bunch of say in this. The fact that the NFL doesn't have a draft lottery and puts us in situations where fans were pinned against each other and rooting for losses, where it's the only league that does this, is insane. But ultimately, Lori, we just talked about the glory days with Eli Manning, and yes, they had the fourth pick, made the trade, whatever. He was the first overall pick. The way the NFL is trending in this direction, the idea that you're going to land Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen late in first rounds to me is non-existent, and you got to be at that top of the draft now, and you're also dead on arrival on any Super Bowl hopes and building a team if you don't get that. So you're right, whether that's Mara's fault, whether that's Shane's fault, here we are again, and we're all going to fight with each other, and maybe the Giants are 1 or 2 years late, and it's not, and Quinn Ewers isn't the answer, or, Cam Ward isn't the answer, but this whole thing just sucks, and it's not going to get any better, unfortunately, until they actually identify the franchise quarterback. And by the way, good for Daniel Jones, and we said this on Sunday night's episode, me and Bryce. He went through a lot of crap last week. I got to see him do it versus somebody else versus the Commanders before I even, back him again this year. Not that he should be the quarterback next year again.
Lori, let me jump in here quickly.
Yeah.
I want to backtrack quickly on what you said about Mara. What exactly are you blaming? Like, I just want to hear this. Like, what exactly are you blaming Mara for in this one instance for what's going on with the Giants?
So you said one instance. It's more the bigger picture landscape. And it is true. Like Shaun, I have a long memory and it goes way back. I'm going back to sitting in the stands with my dad. And, as a kid, I was part of 15 years of lousy football. We've had enough, and the sign flying overhead. So I've sat through that. But in terms of John Mara, and this will dovetail, let's take it to Joe Schoen as well. The hard part here with Joe Schoen, I'll come back to Mara. The hard part with Joe Schoen is strategically, I have, for the most part, agreed with his decisions. I think we have a general manager who understands roster construction, understands strategy, and makes the right, understands salary cap and how you use resources. I think there's that. The problem and the sad part, because he does seem to understand the fundamentals, is that the most important part of the job, obviously, is evaluating talent. And you have to get the draft right. Yeah. Fair or unfair, you have to get the draft right. And yes, that's your first round draft picks, but that's also, you got to find the hidden gems. You got to do all that, and you have to do it consistently. And unfortunately, there's just not, look back at the roster they inherited. Yeah, certainly a losing roster, terrible. I would say they finally this year, I think if you're looking for a positive, I think the offensive line will, I know we've been saying it for years, but I think there's a chance for it to be maybe, God willing, league average. I mean, Giants fans aren't asking for a lot. It's not like
we're league average right now.
Yeah. League average. I think
the ability to function an offense behind it, which, by the way, the Giants have had the ability to the first 2 weeks.
Right. So a league average offensive line might be in sight finally. That's a plus, but that's not really draft. That was actually going out and bringing in some mid-level free agents.
Because he missed on 2 picks,
correct,
by the way.
Correct. And so that's the problem is, so the Evan Neal draft pick, honestly, I probably would have done the same thing, but nobody's paying me millions of dollars to evaluate and get it right. Yeah. And then, you know what, the Josh Azudu, I think that whole draft, whether it's Wandale Robinson or whatever, there were reaches. He was reaching players that probably would have been available. Like if he just had sat there with like Mel Kiper on auto draft, the Giants probably would be in better shape. And that's the problem for Joe Schoen is, do you keep around a guy who seems like he, has the fundamentals, but isn't giving the coaching staff enough talent?
Yeah. Well, on that note, and first of all, I think to back Lori's point, if we're backtracking, which whatever, it's one giant step. We can do whatever we want. We can backtrack a million times. We are still paying the price for Dave Gelman being an awful GM, running this team into salary cap hell, identifying Daniel Jones as the quarterback, drafting Saquon Barkley second overall, more on him in a second. And Joe Schoen, I think, was dealt the most awful of hands to kind of dig yourself out of, and whiffing a lot, as Lori just alluded to, on that first draft has only further spiraled this. So, why shame on John Mara? Well, you made a terrible hire in Dave Gelman, allowed him to hire a terrible second head coach, and it set them back. Now, here is the positive, Lori, and the people I've talked to. The Giants did let go of a couple scouts after that first draft, and the stupid, silly thing about the NFL is you have everybody, and we see it all the time, right? Shane is flying all over the place right now. All these scouts doing the job. That first draft that Joe Shane had, sure, he had final say, he had intangibles. There are plenty of scouts that are not with this organization, or the philosophies have been instructed to change. So that draft, while it is Joe Shane's ultimate decision, is still fingerprints of the Gettleman era. The last two drafts are the clean slate Shane era, and at least as it stands right now, it's 2 games, and I am reaching for positives. And I talked to a couple people who love this draft stuff. The Giants might have had the best rounds 1, 2, and 3 of the NFL draft this past year, with Tyler Nubin and with Drew Phillips and with Malik Neighbors. You can see it. It's only 2 games, and we have been fooled before, and I'm prepared to be fooled again. So possibly Joe Shane is getting there and digging himself out. But at the same time, you make a big trade like Brian Burns, that guy better get after the passer and pay him that kind of money. You can't strike out on that kind of move either. So the jury is very much out on Joe Shane. Here's the way I look at it, though, ultimately, Lori. I think I can't fire, for all the reasons you just said. Joe Shane has the right philosophy. And we saw what Daboll did. They are ultimately still being punished for 2022. They were so good in 2022. Had they failed miserably like we all expect and would have given them a pass for, maybe C.J. Stroud is this team's quarterback today. Maybe it's Anthony Richardson working with Joe Shane. Maybe it's Bryce Young and they stink and they fail. But the point is, they were so good in 2022 that it ultimately set this franchise back here. I got to see them be able to draft and identify their own quarterback. And I appreciate that they didn't reach in doing so by not being in the top 3 this past year. So I'm almost willing to ride this out as lose the locker room isn't fist fighting each other like Ben McAdoo's locker room to go there. But this brings me to the next point, Lori. I got a lot of satisfaction. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Monday night, I put out plenty of Twitter and Instagram videos. That was the happiest I felt as a football fan in a long time. And it's not against Saquon Barkley, the person. It's, Saquon Barkley seems like a nice enough young man. I can't believe I'm at that age saying this. But through Hard Knocks, through the nonsense, I still believe the philosophy was right in not paying an aging, oft-injured running back to do that. And I know my eyes did not deceive me. For all the stuff that all 3 of us are Giant fans, we saw Saquon Barkley do positive. The drop passes were real. The injuries were real. The dancing behind the offensive line was real. The idea that after 1 game in Brazil, all Giant fans had to be taunted, and Joe Shane was basically made to seem like he was the dumbest GM ever for letting Saquon Barkley walk. I'm sorry. Now, after 2 games and seeing Saquon lose a game for the Eagles at the end, I don't know how you guys stand. We taped our podcast before that game happened Monday night, Bryce. Good for Saquon. He'll have the moments. I back Joe Shane and letting Saquon walk, and I hope that John Mara had his eyes open on Monday night and realizes those are the kind of moments that one of many why you don't pay Saquon Barkley long term, and specifically this Giant team where they were at. Lori, I don't know how you feel about this.
So big picture, I look at a running back paying for like an elite running back on a rebuilding bad football team, to me is like spending a lot of money on your closer for a horrible baseball team. Yep. What could you be doing at the trade deadline with your closer on a horrible baseball team?
Trading.
Trade him, of course. Why? Because it's not that he's not going. That value is irrelevant to you right now. Maximize your assets, and relief pitchers in baseball are fungible and they expire, and we don't know year to year. Well, running backs in football hit a certain age, and in Saquon's case, other than let's say his rookie year, the injuries, at times, honestly, you and I both know people who don't watch every single Giant game. You could watch some of those games, and in seasons where he was hurt, there were guys who were backup running backs who were more productive behind the same lousy offensive line.
Alfred Morris.
Right. I mean, and that was the most obvious here. Morris and Gelman were more productive because they just hit the hole, and,
Right.
and it was better. And so Saquon, the person, all pro, great guy. Off the field, great guy. All of that. But on the field, at a time was really dynamic. And then I think the league had a reputation effect where he is helpful, that he still was the guy that I never understood it exactly, but opposing defenses, even last year, they're, accounting for him in a way that opens it up for some other people. There's a value to that. Like, sure. I get it. But if you spent time really watching him, that drop was the least surprising thing. Saquon is fine on the one-handed catch that he'll make look great, but he is so not a Christian McCaffrey. He never was. He's not a Le'Veon Bell as a receiving running back. He doesn't have wide receiver skills. His hands are just not that as good, not as consistent, not the same route runner, all of those things. He's a very good running back. And then the final point I'll make is, beyond it not being an aging running back with an injury history on a bad rebuilding football team, not being a good use of resources. But on top of that, I would say that, look, Devin Singletary, 5.1 yards per carry. Saquon Barkley, 4.4 yards per carry. Who has the better offensive line? Who has better other weapons around them? Who has the threat of, Jalen Hurts, all that sort of stuff? Yeah. Like, he should be great behind that. And I'm not saying he's not good. But, Shaun, also finally what you expressed was one of my first shows on WFAN. I said I have a few theories of sports. One of them is my Schadenfreude theories of sports. And the word Schadenfreude.
Lori, if you think I know what that means, I mean, geez.
So here it is. Schadenfreude means, and this will resonate with your soul, Shaun. Schadenfreude means taking pleasure at others' pain. Oh. And as sports fans, Yankees, Red Sox, Mets and Yankees, whatever, it is about, what? My team might suck, but if we're going to get made fun of, yeah, damn right. I want to watch the former running back drop a ball that was put into his hands and cost his team a win, and have the rest of the league shut their mouths on the stupid Giants who should have signed him. Yes.
That was it. Yeah. That was why I was so full of joy on Monday night. And not just like, that was fun. I mean, my daughter, Bryce, was sleeping on my lap as I sat downstairs in my little man cave here, right? Sleeping on my lap, watching this game. And she knows, Daddy, we hate the Eagles. We hate the Cowboys. I jumped up, screamed, fist pumped at the top of my lungs, woke her up. What's going on? I go, the Eagles are going to lose. Saquon Barkley, right? It was that, Lori. It wasn't that I didn't like Saquon. It was I've been shoved down my throat how much the Giants made a mistake letting this guy walk, while I've tried to reason with people and go, he's going to drop big pass. He's going to get hurt. And then it happened on that stage to watch that team lose and see all the Eagle fans then crumble and stuff. Oh, Howie Roseman this and Nick Sirianni this. And blaming Sirianni, which had the problems. But it's the first taste. Saquon is going to have those moments, which ultimately I think that Mr. Mara should look at Joe Schoen and go, okay, I understand what you were doing here. And if you want to tie this all back to Lori's point about being frustrated with John Mara, I think that John Mara let Joe Schoen operate. I think that he had to question some of Schoen's decisions, like we saw in Hard Knocks. I believe Saquon Barkley wasn't traded last year at the deadline because John Mara didn't want to lose those jersey sales and lose that popular player. And that could have been a third-round pick. And then maybe he signs with the team you traded him to, and he doesn't sign with the Philadelphia Eagles. He doesn't have to live with that. So I think that all ties together. But let me just say this.
Saquon could score 4 touchdowns a game for the rest of the season, and I'd still think it was the correct decision. It doesn't matter what he does with the Eagles. It's a completely different team, completely different makeup, completely
and
different.
And Jermaine Illuminor and John Runyon probably aren't here if you saw in Saquon Barkley.
You had to address the foundation of the team. You had to address the defensive and offensive lines. Look at every other team that's successful in the NFL. Where do they thrive? On the lines, in the trenches. That's where the Giants struggled so mightily over the last, 8 to 9 years with the offensive line? Like, how long have we been talking about this? It's truly insane to me that there are people out there, and all these people are casuals. Let's put that out there as well. These people don't follow the Giants like we follow the Giants. So it's an easy argument to make where the masses can get behind and say, oh, yeah, idiots, Saquon Barkley, the Giants don't win. This is what you guys do. You don't do the right thing. They did the right thing. And again, Saquon could put up 30 touchdowns this year. Joe Schoen still made the right decision at the end of the day.
Now, Lori, before we let you go here, me and Bryce at the end of this pod, we're going to make our picks and everything. What are your expectations this weekend in Cleveland?
Well, Cleveland plays better at home, and that defense, I think, is going to be Myles Garrett, I believe, off the top of my head, does not yet have a sack this season.
He's been hurt in every game. He's basically playing on one foot right now.
Even on one foot. Myles Garrett's not happy about that he has no sacks so far this season. So I would expect him to get off the schneid on, if he's playing on one toe. I do think that defense is going to want to show up. But the flip side is Deshaun Watson. I mean, I think the best quarterback for the Browns is actually Jameis Winston sitting on the bench. I think that, off of the model that they had with Joe Flacco last year, if that team wants to be a playoff team, I think they can be. Put Jameis Winston. I think Deshaun Watson looks kind of toast. So we'll see, how do the Giants show up against them? The Giants have a weird way of, play down to the competition, sometimes play up to it when you don't expect them. I certainly don't expect them to win, but the offensive line's been encouraging. And I do think with Daniel Jones, to your point, Shaun, that was against Washington. He always plays well against Washington. Yep. But I don't know. I guess I don't expect them to be humiliated, partially because I don't think that the Browns offense can put up 35. I don't think they can put up 30-plus points on anybody.
Right. I think that's a good way to look at it. And, me and Bryce are going to get into this in just a second. The Browns are not good enough to blow people out, so I am expecting a very mucky, tight game. And if that's the kind of game, maybe it's the kind of game where Daniel Jones doesn't make mistakes and they can hang in there. Lori, why don't you let everybody know where they could hear you, obviously, on WFAN free on the Odyssey app, socials, the whole deal.
Yeah, so Sunday nights, every Sunday night, and most of the year from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. on the Fan. And now football season, after Sunday night football, every Sunday night you can tune in. And I love that I get to break down the games. Giants, Jets fans do a little sports therapy on Sunday nights. So on the Fan, on WFAN, as Shaun said, also Odyssey app, rewind feature if you miss it. And you can always hit me up on Twitter, on X, at L Rubinson.
I love it. And good luck to your Mets the rest of the way, Lori. I think they got this in the bag. All right.
I'm happy about that.
Lori, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
That is the great Lori Rubinson. She is one of, in my opinions, working at WFAN and in those offices for a long time, one of the best. I mean, if you had to rank them, one of the best Giant fans I've ever worked with there. And she was always a pleasure to work with. Always great to, when we text, interact on Twitter on Giants football.
Shaun, it's a shame the lack of Giants fans at the Fan. There are too many Jets fans. Like it's not an accurate representation of New York.
It's funny you say that, Bryce, because to me, I probably mentioned this in the pod. So if I have, forgive me. 2 weeks ago, I thought I had my greatest honor of my career. And that was the owner of the New York Giants, John Mara. Lori just ripped a bit, but I like John Mara. I get where he's coming from after meeting him. 2 weeks ago when we did the show, Evan and Tiki, on that Friday from MetLife Stadium, he came over. He was coming on set. We got to interview him in the commercial break, shook my hand. He introduced himself. And to me, like, I'm meeting the owner of the freaking New York Giants. Like, that's my team, Looked me dead in the eyes and said, it's nice to hear a Giants fan finally Monday through Friday.
Wow.
On WFAN. And it was like,
you probably
hear that. I know like some of the audience may not care, but think about it. Think if you guys are all Giant fans listening, to hear the owner introduce himself that way and acknowledge like that he views himself. So look, when I was growing up, Francesa always, he was a Parcells guy, always, was kind of Mr. Giant. But I guess people think of like the loud yelling fans, right? BT's obviously a big Jet fan. Boomer and Gio. Boomer was a Jet player for a little bit, but Gio's a Viking fan. But Beningo forever represented the Jet fans. Evan has represented the Jet fans. Craig was a Jet fan. So I get that. I love it. I love that for this team that I love so much, that we do this podcast, that you may not always agree with me, and that's okay for all of our listeners. That's okay if you don't always agree with me, but just know that I live and breathe this team, and it's really cool that I get to have, and I understand the power of that, having a microphone on WFAN Monday through Friday where I can kind of represent the fan base, and that's really cool. And Lori obviously does a great job and has for a long time representing both the Giants and the Mets fans on WFAN. So Bryce, we kind of broke down, gave a little outlook. Lori gave you her feeling. I'm going to share a little bit of a sentiment. Let's get into our fantasy versus reality segment here. And by the way, when you're 0-2, we don't have to break down the nuts and bolts of what has to go on and on. I think that was a good spot kind of doing general outlook stuff at 0-2 with Lori. All right. So I'll start it off. I clearly have picked this team to win each of the first 2 games, and I've clearly been wrong. You know why I'm laughing?
You're gonna tell me that you think you're gonna win again.
I think they're gonna win Sunday. I really do. As the week gone on. Now let me explain. It has something to do with what Lori said. Look, we've learned our lesson here. The Giants season, they're not going to the playoffs. They're not dead. But something Lori said, I didn't know she was going to say, but I also kind of agree with. I think the Giants understand there's desperation here, and it comes down to the opponent. I am going to promise you this right now. Barring some kind of massive, catastrophic injury in Dallas, I'm not picking the Giants to beat the Dallas Cowboys next Thursday night. I have to see it before I'm ever that stupid. But I kind of think they're going to play for Daboll here a little bit this week. I sense that the locker room stuff is good. And also, I just don't think the Browns are good enough to let a game get away from the Giants. So while everybody points to the Browns defense, and I understand it, I know the Cowboys with basically no run game crushed the Browns 2 weeks ago. Last week, I don't know what the heck happened in Jacksonville. The Browns also still obviously no Nick Chubb. They'll run the ball well because the Giants defense has stunk against the run, and that's going to churn clock again. So I don't think we're ever going to get in a blowout fashion here.
Yeah.
And I also don't think that Deshaun Watson is going to play turnover-free football the way the Washington Commanders did as well. And I think that, 1 or 2 turnovers there can be the difference, and I think it will be the difference. So I'm going to give you my game pick before I give you the fantasy and reality aspect of this. I think the Giants are going to win this game 19-17. And I think they're going to win the game on a game-winning Greg Joseph field goal where it's going to make us, hear this out, it's going to make us more frustrated that we did not have a kicker the week before, because we're going to go, look, you see what a difference a kicker made? Like, that theme is going to continue here. And it'll be an ugly, feel-good kind of moment. But in typical Giant fashion, it won't be able to last the whole week because I got to play the Cowboys on a short week and probably get punched in the face. Correct. So my game pick is 19-17. Here's my fantasy pick. I gave you 19-17 as the score. You know what my fantasy pick is? Greg Joseph. I think he's kicking 4 field goals this week. And they're going to score 1 touchdown from Malik Neighbors. They're going to kick 4 freaking field goals in this game. And the kicker is going to continue to be the theme. Now, the reality of how the Giants have to win. I kind of just set up the score and all of this stuff. Look, you're going to have to get turnovers this week. The Devin Singletary turnover, the more I pined over and watched the game again, there's a litany of reasons why the Giants lost the game, and I still go back to the defense being the primary reason. Great, you didn't give up touchdowns, which is a positive, but it's still a negative if you can't get off the field. The Devin Singletary turnover and losing that turnover battle and losing a possession, giving one back, quite literally is how the game was determined if you really want to boil it down. You got to get a turnover or 2 this week, and you got to play clean football. If this game is going to be as tight as I think it's going to be because the Browns are not good enough and play an ugly style, win with our defense at home kind of game, then to me, I really think if you lose the turnover battle, you lose this football game. It's very, very cookie cutter. It's very, very vanilla. It's very, very like bland football analysis. But sometimes when a team is bland and their opponent is bland, it comes down to the bland football analysis. The reality is get a turnover or 2. Don't turn the ball over. And I think the Giants will be right there with a chance to get Daniel Jones to get them into a game-winning drive situation should they have the ball late, Bryce. So again, maybe it's my last planting the flag of hopeful thinking. Maybe it's a non-belief in the Browns. I think if week 1 versus Dallas went a little different for the Browns versus Dallas, I'd feel a little more negative. But I've seen the warts, man. The Browns have warts, and the Giants have plenty too. But that generally lends itself to a very low-scoring, ugly football game where turnovers determine it. Give me Giants 19-17, get the turnover battle, and give me Greg Joseph with 4 field goals. And take it away.
I don't know if I share your same optimism here. I picked the Giants to lose last week, of course, and they did, in fact, lose. I just see this Browns team as a team looking to make a statement. There's no better way and no better team to play to make a statement against than the New York Giants, with all the BS they have going on, with all the controversy stemming from last week. Not to say that that's like seeped into the locker room, that I don't even know that seeped. I don't even know if I use that word correct.
Who knows?
There's no sign of any of the controversy, translating to the players and the coaching staff not named Brian Daboll to Shane Bowen to whoever. The Browns are going to look to make a statement in this game, and I think they win this game. I want to say like 15-10. I don't see
on the table.
I really think the Giants defense, you're going to face Jerome Ford and Deonta Foreman, who's cut into a lot of Jerome Ford's touches. These two guys, are they two unbelievable running backs in the NFL? No, absolutely not. Is Brian Robinson? Is Austin Eckler at this stage in his career? Also no. So when I look at what the Giants need to do to win this game, they need to stop the run. Like, of course, like that's been their Achilles heel so far in this season, is not being able to stop the run. They need to stop the run. It's as simple as that, Sean. Against Jerome Ford, against Deonta Foreman. Like, stop the run. Get that out of the way. You want a chance to win this game. You stop.
How about instead of stop the run, don't let the guy look like Barry Sanders. How about just be average versus the run?
And don't let Deshaun Watson look like the old Deshaun Watson before whatever happened. I think that this Giants team, there's two guys that I look at when I want to point to and say the Giants could win this game, and it's Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. We have not seen enough from them. I think to get the Giants defense going, they have to get going. Drew Phillips is bringing the intensity in its secondary. Tyler Newman has played extremely well for a rookie. I think Drew Phillips has played well just as a normal football player. I think he's one of the steals of the draft. The Giants defense, to truly take control of this game, to get the turnovers that you want the Giants defense to get, it all stems from the guys on the edges. The two guys, Kayvon, who was picked 5th overall, Brian Burns, the one who's making $30+ million a year, it stems from them. We've talked about it countless times on this podcast. What do the Giants need to do to win impactful games? And that is to get to the quarterback. And what have they not done, Sean, in the first 2 games? Kenny Daniels ran into a lot of sacks. I don't count them, all right? I don't count them. And the one time that Kayvon and Brian Burns got to the quarterback, they called the Drew Phillips holding, which was a phantom hold. No hold there. Okay. They need to get to the quarterback. It's as simple as that. Deshaun is erratic. He has no idea what he's doing half the time on the football field. He forces throws. He rolls out of the pocket and into no man's land. Sack the guy, all right? Sack the guy. It's as simple as that. Fantasy play. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, Sean. Ride Malik Neighbors. I know you're probably going to go, oh, give me another. No, why would I? Why would I? It's clear the Giants need not only want to do that, they need to do that if they want any chance of winning any game this year. They have to feed Malik Neighbors. They're going to continue to feed Malik Neighbors. And if you got him on your team, ride him all year long. Do not take him out of the lineup. He's just going to continue to eat. He's going to continue to get at least 10 to 15 targets a game. And Sean, I need to see more from this defensive line. I can't continue to watch Dexter Lawrence get double and triple teamed by all the guys in the middle, leaving one-on-ones on the outside for Kayvon and Brian Burns. I need to see some wins from them. I need to see some good reps from them. And I have not seen those good reps thus far, whether it be, against the run or trying to sack the quarterback. It's frustrating. It's about damn time. Like figure it out.
Bryce, how passionate, and I love it. All right, so here's a little update. Bryce is going to be right, or I'm going to be right, and we're going to know. And next week is a very clunky week on One Giant Step, but jam-packed with podcasts. You're going to want to download and subscribe to One Giant Step everywhere podcasts are available and free on the Odyssey app. Download, subscribe. At Bryce Gelman, at Sean Morash as well. Why, you say, are you again pushing the download subscribe? Well, get this. The Giants are on Thursday Night Football. So the plan here on One Giant Step, we're going to have a little reaction pod. Depending on how much Shawnee drinks, it'll either be out early Monday morning or later Monday morning, okay? On top of that, and this is me having a live production meeting with Bryce, I think Wednesday morning we'll probably tape a preview edition podcast for Thursday Night Football, possibly. We'll talk to Bryce about that because we're going to have to get that out by Thursday so people listen to that. And then sometime Friday morning, you're going to hear us again reacting to Thursday Night Football. So that's 1, 2, 3 episodes between the Browns game and the Cowboy game that you're going to get of One Giant Step next week. And then we'll scale it back to probably one preview edition the following week. But nonetheless, download, subscribe, because this is going to be a little bit of a different week on when you see them, when they have. So every time they drop, you'll get that little download and you'll get that little alert. And you can listen to us and break it all down. And hopefully I'm right and Bryce is wrong. Or if your team tank, hopefully Bryce is right and I'm wrong. Either way, somebody's going to be right, somebody's going to be wrong, and the Giants are going to play a football game on Sunday. So download, subscribe to One Giant Step everywhere podcasts are available. Enjoy the game Sunday. Thanks for taking One Giant Step with us.